All right, we'd like to welcome everyone here to our city council and appreciate everyone that's here in our chambers and all those who are watching it on SF-17. We've invited Chris Barrett to come up and give us our motivational, inspirational message.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah, that'd be you. Come on down.
All right. Stand here, look that way.
Stand there and look at us. No,
Oh,
I'm sorry, you gotta look at us.
No worries, you guys are.
The camera right there, got the 5 million people that are watching you.
5 million. Awesome, I like that. You know, I just wanted to come and share a short message because Stacy had asked me this morning to come and share a motivational speech, not speech, but a couple minutes. I operate Serve Daily, and so we're always trying to do acts of service and promote people to do random acts of kindness. So if you look at the newspaper's name, Serve Daily, you'd put in the middle there something like your neighbor, your mom, a family member. So basically we would just reach out to the community today to serve a neighbor daily. Find something that a neighbor needs, serve them, brighten their life, brighten your life, and together we can take care of local issues by a random act of kindness, one at a time. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. All right, I've asked Councilman Mendenhall to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and repeat the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is our youth council, swearing them in. Lovely. So what, we can have them all come up here and stand?
Tara's going to take over from here.
Perfect.
So this is most of us, so I'm going to have them each say their name, their position, and a little bit of what they do.
Perfect.
My name is Kiara Allen. I'm a service officer with Michael Churchill. So we find service opportunities for the city council to do around the community.
Tell us which school you go to.
I go to Maple Mountain and I'm a junior.
All right.
Perfect.
I'm Mattis Meets. I go to Maple Mountain and I'm a junior. I'm the recorder of the city council and I get to take notes and keep records.
Great.
My name is Michael Churchill. I am a service officer, as Kara said. I go to Maple Mountain High School. I'm a senior in this school. And we just plan service projects for the city council.
I'm Sydney Beal. I'm the public relations officer. So I take care of social media and take pictures at the events and I'm a junior in
Great.
I'm Jace Ballard. I go to Maple Mountain. I'm a junior. I am Mayor Pro Tem, so I am learning to become next mayor for City Council.
Get your arm fixed because you'll need it.
My name is Benjamin Leishman. I'm the mayor of the city council. I'm a senior at Maple Mountain High School, and I run meetings and send out information to the rest of our council and make the final decisions on things.
Great.
Hey, I'm Lorena Hain. I am a senior at Maple Mountain High School, and I am the planning commissions officer with Cassidy. And part of our duties, I guess, we find guest speakers for our meetings to talk to us about their responsibilities in the city or in their jobs.
I'm Cassidy Groves. I'm the Planning Commission's officer with Lorena. Something I do is help write the Congress bills. So when we do the mock Congress sessions in our meetings every month, I'm a senior at Spanish Fork High School.
Great.
Awesome.
So,
We just have one come in.
it's not on here.
No, tennis. That happens.
There's nothing here that tells me.
Tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Emily Colton. I'm the treasurer, and
What high school? Where are you at?
Spanish Fork.
Spanish Fork High School. Okay.
We always get a lot of people that ask how they can get involved and join the Youth City Council. You still have a standing date every month?
Yes, they can join until the end of December, so they just go to the website and they can fill out the application and we get it.
Perfect.
No. Super. All right. We get to swear you all in? I should, what? I better come down here. I'll come down. All right. Everyone raise their right hand except those who can't raise their right hand. You can raise your right hand. Here we go. Okay. I do solemnly swear, and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
that
that I will support, obey, and defend
I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
You really tested them on that last time.
Congratulations. Go shake every one of those guys' hands. You just go right here in front. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you for sure.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Mayor. Good work. Say hi to your mom and dad. Thank you. Thanks for serving.
Thank you. Congratulations. Awesome. Give them a round of applause before they head out. Real quick, while they're still here with their parents, I just want to give you a quick update of when Seth and I were at the League of Cities and Towns last week, which a lot of towns have youth city councils and whatnot. But when we were at a meeting with the league a couple of weeks ago, they specifically asked, the league leadership asked me to, at our next conference, which is next week that we'll go to talk about Spanish Fork Youth City Council and how we have so much activity and how we end up doing so much good in the community. So when it's things like this that are really successful, people in the whole state take notice and they want to know what the secret of success is about this Youth City Council. And I don't know much besides saying how great you kids are, and that's a reflection of your parents and what they've taught you of how to be involved and be volunteers. So good work, kids, good work, parents, and good work, Tara. You do a whole bunch to get this effort out there too. So thank you so much. People are noticing.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. All right. We'll move into public comments. If anyone has someone that'd like to come up and address the mayor of the council, feel free to come on up. If you'll just state your name.
My name is Laverne Emery, and we live at 1207 East Center Street. And I'm sorry, I'm crying. I just want you to know that we're willing to sell our house to the city. We're willing to move. We do want a few things out of the house that kind of mean, a lot to us. And just want you to know that it's hard because this was supposed to be our home for the rest of our lives. I'm sorry. But we are willing to sell. And that, but we need moving costs to move because we put a lot of money into the house. We just got through doing the roof and water gutters or rain gutters, whatever they are, and so we don't have any savings anymore. So I wanted to say
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, appreciate you coming. Anyone else like to come address? Ooh, it's a nice move.
Let anyone else. My name is Chris Baird. I was Serve Daily. I just wanted to let the community know that we have a free public newspaper in town where we try and focus on anything positive in the community. Again, the same message I shared earlier applies. We do have a great community calendar in here. So if you have any events, free or paid, we publish them for free in the paper. Also, if you have weddings, scout awards, other life events, you can submit them to us for free. We'll list them on our website for free. And if it applies when we come out on the monthly edition, we'll put them in print for free. We're bringing back true community services for the public, and just are here to serve. Again, remember to serve someone daily, and we thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else like to address the council, Mayor? If not, we'll move to council comments. Councilman Argal.
The only thing I have tonight, Mayor, is just to mention the Senior Citizen Center is now, they kind of took a little vacation during the summer. They're back open. They're fixing meals and having their luncheon and then their membership meal. They had a membership drive, which starts each August and get collected. So they've had some good success, some great meals, and encourage the seniors to come out to the center and get involved. There's some good things going on there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Mendenhall.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just piggybacking on the Youth City Council there, couldn't be prouder of a group of kids in Spanish Fork. That there you get to see the leadership of them coming up here and getting sworn in. But you should see the meetings. Stacy was here at the city office when they had their meeting this last little bit, and they filled up this room to capacity and overflow. So a bunch of great kids getting involved and really helping the city in all service aspects. I know they help the chamber when the chamber calls, and they help the city when the city calls. So another kudos to them and their parents that helped them be involved. We had a Healthy Communities Board meeting, Mayor, that was held here in the city office. We've got some good items on the docket to get moving on with the Healthy Active and Healthy Communities grant that we received from IHC and from the League of Cities and Towns. So more exciting news coming out about that, and we'll release it through the city channels and through that Facebook page. So that's all I have.
Great. Councilman Scope.
Mayor, just two small things to report on. The Fine Arts Committee, we met. They're looking again, as mentioned before, the Harvest Moon Hurrah, the different activities that are coming up soon. The city's website will have information on that. And again, anyone that wants to be involved, they are looking for volunteers to help with not just the Harvest Moon Hurrah, but the different things throughout the year. They do a great job with that, with the youth theater. And there's the website. Youth theater and things. Also, additionally, we had members, citizens of Spanish Fork that came home with the National Guard Engineer Unit from a 10-month deployment overseas. Had that, a Saturday ago? Time's kind of flown by, so it feels like a month ago and yet just yesterday. But last Saturday, appreciate all the citizens that came out to welcome them home. Having been on the receiving end of that myself twice, I can tell you that it really endears Spanish Fork to us as soldiers, citizen soldiers, serve our country. One thing about the National Guard is our Commander-in-Chief is the governor of the state of Utah, not the President of the United States. Ultimately, it is the president, but we work for the governor, we work for the state, and ultimately we work for our communities. And so to be received home and welcomed home like that, I know talking with the soldiers, they were very happy despite the fact they hadn't slept for about 2 days. Having been through that, most of it's because you're so excited simply to be back on American soil. and with your families. So great event, and appreciate the help from the city, the public safety, fire engines, police, EMTs, everyone being able to drive them around, and then just the outpouring from citizens and businesses. There were businesses that had their vehicles lined up on Main Street, citizens out with flags, and Park Elementary had a father that came home, and the kids were out there with a sign as well. And so really a true community effort. And on behalf of all veterans, just can't thank the city and the citizens enough. That's all.
Great. Councilman Gordon.
Mayor, this Saturday there is an event, aeroplanes, trains, and automobiles down at the airport. It'll go from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. Helicopter rides and aircraft displays, plane rides, a car show. They're going to race cars down the runway, and we do it every couple of years, and so you won't want to miss it. It'll be a great opportunity to take down the family and have a fun Saturday. I just wanted to mention our Youth City Council that just left. That's one of the events that they'll go and help us at. They're very service-minded young adults. They'll help to kind of run these types of things. Chris?
Yes, it'd be good to know if there's a drawing for the helicopter
and the plane rides. Sorry, yeah. They usually line up and try and get as many people and kids up as they can.
And I think the plane rides will actually be done at a later date, but the drawing will be that day.
Okay, thank you. Gotcha. Good. So you won't want to miss that. That's a great opportunity. And another thing that's going on Saturday, we continue our farmers market. Things are going well. It's just right here in the city's parking lot. And the changes of the season, we're moving out of sweet corn and into pumpkins, Mayor. And it's just, there's a little bit of everything down there. And so again, kudos to the chamber and all they do with that. It's a wonderful farmers market. And then I mentioned that I went to Indianapolis for WasteCon. It was interesting rubbing shoulders with individuals from all around the country that have the same thing as us when it comes to garbage and recycling. And you talk to people from Michigan and different areas of the country and find out their successes and failures and our successes and our failures. And so one of the things to note, Mayor, is that when it comes to our landfill, the regulations there are changing. The gas to energy, we'll have to drill so many wells out in our landfill to take the gas out of the landfill, and then it converts into electricity. And we're currently at 35%. The standard was at 50%, and they've just changed that to 34%. So we're going to have to get back in compliance in the next 20 months. And so those were some of the things that we discussed out there in Indianapolis. And then lastly, next week we will attend the League of Cities and Towns conference and have plenty to learn up in Salt Lake with our fellow communities from all around the state of Utah. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Beck.
First of all, I just wanted to thank so many chamber members for our year-end barbecue last week. Mayor was there, and Mike and Brandon, and it was well attended. It was our biggest year-end party yet. We had over 100 people, a lot of local businesses donating food for the evening and entertainment and prizes. And then also I wanted to share that our current count as of our last board meeting last week for chamber members were just over 265 members. So we're definitely growing this year. And Clark, if you want to come up and share what you have.
I do want to reiterate our thanks to everyone who came, and especially those citizens watching who have never had the opportunity or the use of that North Park Pavilion. You're missing out. It's absolutely beautiful. It's fun. It's got the best grill that there is, and we had a great time, and we appreciate those of you who came. and we appreciate Mayor Leifson coming to his very own steakhouse. Mr. and Mrs. Leifson, they broke it in, but we had a great time. We tried to use all farmers market food that we could, and as Councilman Beck said, a lot of it, most of it was donated, and different things, everything from the greens to the mums on the tables by Olson Greenhouse. It was just a wonderful experience for all. And we had Tony and Carol Messerly from Salem do Cowboy Entertainment, Cowboy Story Entertainment, which it's too bad we didn't get a chance to have them stop and really do a great program, because they do. One thing that I don't think that we have announced that we're incredibly proud of, Matt Barber has joined the board of directors of the chamber. We had an opening come up because of business duties, decided that he needed to go elsewhere, go back to his business. And Matt with Western was very, very gracious in stepping forward, and we're excited about that. The September business of the month is sippin', and as I went through the drive-through and was asked what that meant, as I got my O. Henry bar and my dirty Dr. Pepper, I told them I'd be back and tell them later, or tell them at church, where I go to church with the Davises and the Stewarts. But we're excited about that, all of the new businesses that, and different types that are opening around the city. Today we had chamber ribbon cutting, and we snuck a couple of more in on Councilman Beck, and we're now at 269. That fluctuates constantly. Never seems that we can quite break 270. We're trying very, very hard, but that was Dr. Valoy Cook, chiropractor, his new office on 800 North, which is absolutely beautiful, and bringing back some of the dignity to that street that it always had when Dr. Jensen had his veterinary clinic and others, and the yards and the different things were immaculate there. And with the airplanes, trains, automobiles, and John Candy things, the great story about the Patey brothers that used Spanish Fort Springville, as their base of operations. If you didn't get a chance to see it in the Deseret News, go back and take a look. And as for the farmers market, it used to be that there was the worry that there would not be enough people come. Now there's the worry that maybe there are too many that come, and that actually is an incredibly rich blessing to the vendors who are there. And as a chamber, we're working on that, and we'll work on that for time immemorial. The center of town and the crossroads of town have been where the farmers have brought their goods to exchange. But we are becoming well known for what we have there. Had the opportunity of picking up a new platinum member plaque for the Joint Chiropractic. I didn't know, but you can actually franchise chiropractors. He's the franchisee, and he's interviewing for chiropractors if anybody is looking. But in picking that up, had the opportunity with Leslie Cole to go next door and meet Joel Jensen, who is the young man who's been doing all of the work on the building next door, the old bank build. Well, I always knew it as a bank building. It's been a couple of different things throughout time. It will be, he hopes, well, it will be, he hopes it will be stuccoed, bricked, and everything ready to go starting on the inside in 2 weeks. But he's going to open an A1 sewing and vacuum machine store there, because 30 years ago his father did, and his father had to move north because Spanish Fork wasn't growing fast enough, and he decided that Spanish Fork was the place to come back to. He's got great space to rent for office and others, and is just absolutely excited to come back and be a part of this community. And and thanks again to those who celebrated the achievements of the chamber. We could not do it without the city. And I will say one thing to all of the citizens: thank you for all the ideas of where our farmers market should be. But first off, let's hope for enough rain and snow that next year there will be a farmers market, because lots of farmers are out there drilling for water.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks, Laura.
That's all.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you. Spanish Fork 101. Come on down, Chief, and Don, and anybody else you can handcuff and bring.
Yeah, I've always got to have a backup with me. Don's good backup. So we've got something we'd just like to review with you since our last time that we talked about this was in January at the retreat, and what we wanted to do with our emergency medical services that we provide for the city. Top button?
Try it.
Is it the top button? No,
The right side.
Right
There
side.
you go. There you go.
So just in real quick review, in 2015, this was the structure of our EMS units. We had 36 people who worked for us. Because of some things with Obamacare, we had to turn them into part-timers. They were no longer volunteers, so they had an hourly rate that we were paying them. Typically, we had 3 individuals on a team. If someone was in training, we'd have 4. An individual would then move to a team of 3 once they were trained. We always had one crew on call as the main crew. Don will talk a little bit about it later, but they're referred to as Ambulance 61. That's the first crew that goes out on a call. And we also had somebody else, another crew of 3 or 4, that were Ambulance 62, that are backup people. So typically back then, these individuals were just confined to a geographic area, whether it be their house or their home, or just had to stay down at the station if they needed to. We have one individual that will do that. But they were not required to be at the station, just in a certain area of town, so they could respond in a certain amount of time. That's how it was set up for several years, and then just recently again turned into part-time employees and not volunteers. And so back then in the day, and you guys will remember this when we reviewed these numbers last year, but our typical day was something like this. In 24 hours we'd receive 4 calls. It broke down between day and night, so from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. we received more calls than we did in the evening hours. And then our second ambulance was called out about once every other day, and that's how that averaged out. And one of the things that we wanted to try to do is to curb this, what we called shoot time or page to en route time. Again, remembering that each of these people that are working at this time were at home or at work or in a geographic area, not down at the station. So they had to get to the station and get in the ambulance and then respond to the scene. So we called that page to en route, page to getting to the station, shoot time. And back then, it took them at an average, day and night, about 5 minutes and 26 seconds to get there before they could actually go to the scene. And then when they decided that when they were en route, it was decent time. Average day and night, 3 minutes and 22 seconds. That's reasonable. That's fair. That's safe. That's saving lives. But page to arrival was 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which is too long, and each of you agreed that it was too long. So we've made some changes, and that's what we wanted to talk to you about tonight. These are the things we talked about up there at our retreat or our training. We had several options, 1 through 5. Well, I think we spent a good hour or two talking about this there. We won't do that now unless you want to, Mayor. No. Okay, me either. Thank you. But basically, we had the option of staying the same, no change in service, no change in expense. Our second option was to employ some part-timers and have them stay at the station from 7 to 7 during the times that we have the majority of our calls. And that cost was going to be about $75,000 a year to do that. Our third option was to have full-timers and part-timers stay at the station. We thought that having full-timers there would give us a little bit more benefit, that they perhaps would have more training, but we realized it would also cost more. We back then guesstimated it at over $100,000 to do that option. And again, that would just be during the day, and the nighttime, and the backup would be the same as we have today. The fourth option was to combine our fire and our EMS and have them stay at the station during the day for the majority of the calls that happen during the day. And as you remember, we visited with others that have done this option, and they had some falling out. It was a little bit contentious between volunteers and full-timers working together, and some feeling unwanted, or others feeling like that others weren't up to their standard of practice or training. So that was we had seen others with a little bit of consternation because of that combination there. Secondly, we had our last option was full-time combined, which was the most expensive option. As a matter of fact, I spoke with a chief up in the northern area of the state that is going to this option, similar size in town that we are. He has 3 fire stations, and he is expecting to spend $1.5 million on that option. And we guesstimated it when we were doing this, $1 million. So I think we were in the ballpark back then. And so those were the options that we looked at. We thought that we as the council decided to do with option number 2. And that's where we're at today, and we wanted to kind of report back to you where we are, and kind of we've been doing this since July, so we've got some numbers for this year from with this in place and without it in place, and I wanted Dawn to be here.
I told you wrong. Point down here and see if it worked better. There we go.
To go through press harder. I think I broke it. To go through our structure as it is today, and then some of the times that we have. So what's that?
There's changes, but it's hard to see on paper. We still 36 EMTs. As we went into this process, we've had a turnover of approximately 6 people and replaced them. We still run 3-member teams from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. However, the ambulance 61 or main shift is at the station those 12 hours. Backup responds from their home or business or work or wherever they're at, as long as they're within the 6 minute. We have 3 that as soon as main goes out, they drive down to be closer. So this has opened it up to let more people join, because they're there during the main shift. Night shift and both main and backup run the same from their home or business or in the area. With this, there was a remodeling that needed to take place. The expansion on the kitchen's about 40% done, shower about 85%, exercise room probably 95% done, lounge area probably about 70% done. So we're working towards this and working with those in the city that provide the services so we could keep the cost down. There we go. So if you take a look here, we tried to just show you January through June, annual 61. That's your first one out. Day shift averages 4.36, night shift 543 for a total average of 459. And then you can see back up what happens there. Takes a little bit, I don't know why it's a little bit longer, but a lot of times people are ready for that main shift and not ready for the backup. And a good share of our backup calls happen within 5 minutes of the main. You can sit all day long and all of a sudden you have 3 calls in 15 minutes and we're scrambling to put a third together. July through August shows ambulance 61, day shift 141, and 62 is 441. That averages 215. In August, that dropped to 1.12. We had a couple things to work out that Maine didn't understand. They had an impression they used to wait for rescue on those particular calls. We corrected that. They don't wait for anybody. You go. And so that's dropped that down to 1.12. Now, as soon as that pager goes off, there's an hour and a minute and seconds that is assigned to it. However, when you call for your times, they give you the hour and the minutes. So when that goes off, you may go 15 seconds and that clock clicks to the next number, and now you're in the minute zone or 2 minutes. So I can tell you all of these are probably 40 seconds high if you was to average it all out. So we're getting out the door in August in probably under a minute easily. So take 40 seconds off that number. And that is fast. Dispatch is notated to us that, and you guys are fast, so they see everybody's. And so they're seeing that. For the citizens, not every call we go on is an emergency. And when you know that, you don't run. When it is, you do. And so some of those are out in 15 seconds. Others, they'll go to the bathroom, they'll whatever, but they're out in that average of 1 minute and 12 seconds. So you've got that whole gamut that comes in there that kind of skews these numbers that we really don't see. If we was to look at how this impacts January through June, and I pulled Spanish Fork out because we have the Canyon, I-15, Utah County. So some of those areas are going to take longer and kind of throw us out. But if you look at Spanish Fork, day shift went from 8:20 to 5:02, so it's got 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Anybody that is in need of an ambulance right now, that's significant time change. On a transfer for someone that the doc wants them taken from the rest home over to the hospital for x-rays or tests, it doesn't really matter. And those are numbers that kind of, we're not running. We sit and wait for the traffic to break to go. We're not turning on lights and siren and forcing our way as we would with the cardiac arrest. Night shift, you can see that they've come down a little bit. There's possibly a little bit of competition. I have quite a few night people that ask day people to cover some of their shifts, so they're in a hurry to get going and get back to their families. And so that number's come down everywhere except on that. At a glance, it's 13 seconds longer on this night shift response. So that would be from the ambulance to the scene. And in looking at that, they had a few more fires that were farther away. And so when you take and throw all those numbers in and divide it, That only difference that was not in a improvement state, we can attribute to the time of season and the fires that we've been going on. Any questions that you might have?
How do you feel about the change?
The change is good. It's caused us to make some other type changes that we never foresaw. These are all little steps towards full-time. One of the things that's going to hold us up in the process is a substation. So until there's a secondary station that you actually build for sleeping quarters, there's no way to implement your full-time on a complete basis, only on a daytime basis. So we could look at that as main and backup, or the next step, backup responding to the station once main goes out, so that that next call has that same difference. But eventually we're going to be looking at trying to have that same benefit for everyone. And so that puts the burden on you guys, because a substation really is the thing that allows that to happen. You have to build one that's equipped that way before you modify what you have. And with other things that are probably in the mix, you know, that may not be a modification, maybe just a replacement at that point too. So we know there's a lot of things that you're trying to balance, but these are the steps we're making, and appreciate your support and direction in what you would like us to do, because we're there to serve. I bet you never think, I wonder if the ambulance is going to come when you call. And it's still the mindset down there still is they still think they're volunteers. You can call them part-time, you can call them full-time day. Right now, those that are there for the public. They're not for the job, they're there because of their neighbors and who they know. That will change as we come into a full-time, and they're coming from everywhere to work a shift. So that's something that we'll tend to lose. But we may pick up some more medics that can do a few things that the advanced are not allowed to do at this time.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Don.
Appreciate that. Okay, consent items.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
New business, Utah County reimbursement agreement for the Center Street 900 East to US 6 road widening project.
Okay, we have been put on the STIP, which is a grant list for 2019 to widen Center Street. With that comes the purchase of several homes. A lot of these homes have indicated to us they're interested in selling. And so this agreement would be needed to where if we bought a home now, the county would reimburse us later. And so this was approved by the county commissioners at the end of August. And if you approve this agreement, then it enables us to proceed with purchasing homes.
Okay, any questions, comments?
Mayor, I think the only comment, just for those that might have been watching at home, the citizen that had talked about willing to sell her house and certainly was very, very obviously emotional for those that were watching and didn't piece together that she or her home falls in this area as Highway Center Street will be widened eventually, and so that's kind of the frame of reference for those that were watching where how that plays in, and certainly the city's trying to be as sensitive as we can to the citizens that live in that area. Yeah, that's all.
Quick question, Chris, as I read through it, the item on number 3 under the section 5, which is the terms, tell me that this is boilerplate language, I assume it is, but it says the city acknowledges in the event the funding source is no longer available, city will not be reimbursed by the county, state, but that would take a pretty good act of something for the county and the state not to reimburse us for those expenses,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yes.
the tax money's already there.
It's very unlikely, but it protects the county if for some reason like, the only thing that this really protects against that I could see happening is if maybe the economy went down so low that those funds weren't collected until 2020, and then in 2020 we could get those. If for some reason the tax base was taken away that those funds rely on, then it just protects the county, which we feel like is fair, but it's not likely.
That's all I had.
Great. All right, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the county reimbursement agreement for the Center Street 9th East US 6 Road widening project.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Councilman Scopes, a second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Resolution 1607, a resolution of Spanish Fork to participate in the Utah County CDBG program.
Okay, this is a granting program where we've gotten a lot of money to replace water lines and even some sewer lines in the blocks area. This is just an agreement that every 3 years you have to approve so that they will allow those funds to come to Spanish Fork. We've already approved this once this year, but the county has come back to us with this new agreement, adding a couple clauses on any civil protests that might be had in our city, that we would not prevent them from our facilities. I've worked here for 20-something years, haven't seen one of those, but our city attorney has looked it over and said that this is fine, and so we just needed that in the agreement and then have it with the county, so pretty
Great.
easy.
Any other comments, discussions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 16.7, a resolution of Spanish Fork City to participate in Utah County CDBG program.
Second.
And a motion by Councilman Argal, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. Since this is a resolution, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Scoe.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
That is unanimous and approved. So we're going to skip board appointments and move to design guidelines continued.
Okay.
Anyone
Just
else?
let
Just want to throw one up? I had really anticipated that we'd have this discussion as part of a work session. So in light of that, I haven't prepared any kind of a script. I'm going to speak really just from the top of my head about some things that the city manager and I have talked about quite a bit over the course of the past few weeks, maybe even a couple of months now. And I think we'd like to maybe at least tentatively tonight get some feedback from you, but there's no rush relative to this issue and how you may or may not want to deal with it. To start with, I think it's important maybe to talk about what we do as Spanish Fork City in terms of regulating development projects. And right now, what we do is about as little as we need to do to make sure that people and property is protected and kept safe. That's really what we focus on. It's the basic nuts and bolts of how sites get developed. So before somebody constructs a store, making sure that the parking is adequate and making sure that roads are built sufficiently to carry the amount of traffic that they need to, and so that they'll last over time, and making sure that storm drain systems work so that we don't end up with properties flooded and making sure that buildings are built so that they conform to all of the building codes that again, protect those buildings and people that use them. But beyond that, we really don't invest much time or effort into how things look. And maybe just for purposes of one thing that I would like to focus on tonight, let's just talk about commercial developments. And let me mention that it's a little bit uncommon in Utah County, which is a group of communities you know well, where by and large people believe pretty strongly in the idea that they should be able to do what they want to do with their property with as little regulation and involvement from regulatory groups as is necessary. Pretty hands-off in terms of saying maybe things like, if you want to build a store in this particular area, here's a color palette that you have to choose from. Or these are materials that store needs to be built out of. Or this is how the roof of that building needs to look. We don't do a lot of that in this part of the world. In other regions and other states, it's very, very common. So oftentimes when we talk to people that do work around the country, that maybe they work for a retailer that has stores all over the place. When they start inquiring about our development review process, they'll ask us if we have architectural standards, for example, that need to be followed. They want to know exactly what our landscaping requirements are and what the details are of those, because they're accustomed to dealing with those types of regulations in other parts of the world. And again, today, we don't regulate much by way of how things look. Some of the questions I'm going to ask of you tonight have to do with whether you feel like we should regulate aesthetics. That's a word I'll use over and over again, just how things look, more than we do today or not. And let me be clear, I come with no agenda, but I have had a number of experiences in this community and others in our part of the world here that definitely make me very hesitant about being a big cheerleader for adopting design standards that are going to require, I'll use an example again, just of a retailer, maybe a retailer to maybe change something from their prototypical design to build a store here in Spanish Fork. I'm hesitant to do that. We've taken a lot of opportunities over the years to promote the idea that we're very lenient and very inviting of whatever people like to do to conduct commerce in our community. And I think one of the ways that we've shared that message is by having an absence of regulations. Now that being said, occasionally up here feel like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, and I'll admit that sometimes. I do think that to develop the best community possible, we should be promoting a certain sense of cohesion by way of how things look. So that, for example, if I invested heavily in building a retail building someplace in the city, I could have some assurance that my neighbor would maybe build something next to me that has some kind of guaranteed qualitative aspects to it, some type of look and feel, maybe that doesn't detract from the investment that I've made in my property. The very reason that I think land use regulation exists is that it's really to protect one property owner from what other property owners around them can do. That's the bottom line. I see value in that. I also see many opportunities in the immediate and long-term future of Spanish Fork to create a place that has a distinctive look and feel to it by way of having some regulations for what stores look like. And again, it's not uncommon for communities to promote that type of thing, although it doesn't happen much in this valley. So again, I'm just going to go through a couple of examples of what some other communities have done to try to promote what they think is good design, something that's important in their cases to create the kind of community over time that they want to be. And then maybe we can just chat a little bit. I like the idea that this is listed as a discussion on the agenda. So I'll just cut to what I think would be some important aspects of maybe a design standard, if that's something that you'd like to consider adopting. And first of all, clarity is, in my mind, completely critical. Rules that talk about how something should look or may look, using some key words here, should and may become really problematic in the world of saying this does or does not meet a particular standard. It's much more important to say shall and must, or cannot. Very definitive phraseology, simply to make the application of those rules predictable, so that somebody knows, if I do something this way, it will get approved, or not. And that predictability is what I've most often heard architects, developers, other designers say they crave when they're looking through regulations that communities have. They want to know that if they follow the rules in a certain way, their project will be approved first time through, versus maybe rules that are more subjective that are going to lead to lengthy debates that not only take time but also then take resources that cost companies and design firms money and cause friction. And I think that's something that I'm trying to emphasize here that we want to avoid. So again, clarity. Things don't necessarily need to be simple, but they need to be clear. Syracuse City, not a big city, but in terms of that clarity and just how they've put together some design regulations, I think this potentially is a model that I'd suggest you consider. We can look at some other examples that I have from other communities here in Utah and some in surrounding states. It's been a couple of weeks since I looked at this, but typically there is a process that somebody has to go through to get architectural approval. Again, this is something that we don't currently have on the books here. There's no such regulations or procedure. Oftentimes, cities that have aesthetic standards, they'll employ professionals that aren't your customary city employees to help administer those standards. We don't have an architect on staff, for example, here that maybe can sensibly differentiate between something that does and does not comply with certain standards. And also, I think sometimes communities see a lot of value in having somebody from the outside participate in the review process, almost a third party, as opposed to just having a city entity and somebody representing a developer involved in the process, but also somebody that, at least by way of perception, is a little bit more unbiased and neutral as a part of the discussion. So if we can maybe just scroll through this kind of quick, Tyler. I don't
think these other pages are showing up. Do you want to pull up one of the other examples you had?
Clear's good, but that's not bad in mine. So, and maybe if you can go back to try to reopen that PDF too.
Yeah, let me see if I can find. Is that in your files?
No, I might have to come over there and try to track it down. But if you can go to one of the others,
pull this one. There's you know which one you want.
You know, at least get a. I don't think it matters terribly. Okay. So this one, if I remember right, this is 20 or so years old, Fort Collins, Colorado. One of the better examples that we found. If you can maybe just kind of, in fact, do you guys mind if I sit over here and I just kind of drive? I'm going to try to take about 2 more minutes and then we'll
We need to see your driver's license.
You might want to get out the breathalyzer, given how this is looking right now.
If we need one, use you. There's nothing else I need for, so.
Strike two. Okay. Do we need this anymore?
No.
I'm gonna get out of a bunch of stuff here and see if that helps now. So maybe do things kind of the old-fashioned way. I apologize.
Oh, yeah, we like the old-fashioned way.
3 bells around that. Maybe you 3 bells around this. And just kind of peruse it. And just by way of maybe a quick temperature test, and let me throw out a couple of scenarios. I mean, let's say, for example, that, and I'm going to use a completely fictional example. We're not talking about Outback Steakhouse opening anything in Spanish Fork anytime soon.
We're not.
We're not. They're currently not one of the restaurants that's likely to open a store in the next few years. Just trying to be clear. Not looking to start any rumors or anything.
We'll reopen ours.
Kind of off the table. But let's say if Outback Steakhouse were to propose to build something here today, and they came to you as council members and they said, we have a standard, prototypical, freestanding store that we build, and it's got our corporate architecture and corporate color scheme and corporate materials that we won't deviate from. I think one of the things that we need to seriously contemplate is, would we tell them, you can't build here in Spanish Fork if that's what you're going to do? If you're not going to change it to conform to some standards that we have, then we're sorry. We won't approve what you want to do. I think that particular scenario is maybe kind of a long shot. But frankly, working with Costco and Walmart, they made a few tweaks to their buildings that conformed to some things that we asked them to do just as a courtesy. But those tweaks were super minor, and you'd almost have to have a trained eye to be able to pick out the different materials that they used, for example, on the exterior of their buildings. And in the case of one of them, I think that had we pushed much harder, they might have said, well, we'll just build someplace else. Now, I'm not trying to incorporate any kind of fear into the discussion, but relative to how you feel as the body that ultimately is going to direct what does and doesn't happen, I think it's important to understand that at the end of the day, enforcing these regulations might mean telling somebody, no, you can't do that. And if that's what you're going to do, or if that's the only option, then you may not find a home here in Spanish Fork. I like the way that they've spelled out some different things. Tyler, thanks for tracking this down. Again, clarity. I think this particular document from Syracuse, pictures are worth thousands and thousands of words. They've used them well. It looks like this is the kind of thing that somebody with maybe some Photoshop skill could have put together. That's not the case. They absolutely got some professional help to put this document together. And Tyler, if you just maybe want to kind of scroll through it, that's helpful. Identifying things and then spelling out. Again, for me, what's in very clear terminology, what does and doesn't have to happen. And addressing issues that are pretty common. I think the fundamentals are if somebody's going to build a big box, like 100,000 square foot, or let's say, people don't want it to look boxy. So requiring people to create a certain amount of relief, that is having different planes on the facades protrude and be recessed from one another, so that it doesn't just look like a big square or rectangle. Having variation in roof lines, incorporating different materials to give that same sense of relief on the exterior of buildings, different color schemes. It's almost as if you're camouflaging this big box in with its surroundings to make it look like it's something smaller. And that generally is what these types of approaches are gonna impose in terms of regulations. Again, ways to take, so we can go back to that. This maybe, you can see the undesirable massing, their bottom left-hand corner, and the more appreciated building masses as you go down kind of that continuum from left to right. Going from something that doesn't have a lot of visual interest to something that has quite a bit of interest visually. I've got another dozen pages or so here maybe. Materials, so a lot of times it would be required in communities where you have design standards for somebody to submit a materials board. That's what that is down bottom left-hand column, where you've got actual samples of what they intend to put on the exterior of buildings, and color schemes, everything down to sometimes even the mullions that are used on windows, cornice molding, I mean the actual cutouts of aluminum that are painted. Go to whatever links you do or don't want to with that. But typically architectural boards are going to expect to see that as just a fundamental of them doing their job and saying this does or doesn't meet the standard. Is it helpful to get that kind of a thing? It is if you have rules that you're trying to make sure somebody's adhering to. That becomes important. And again, I think that's why we want to make sure that before we adopt rules, there's something that we care about, because that not only requires resources on the part of applicants, but also on the part of cities to administer. Like I said, getting consultants to help you administer guidelines, having maybe somebody that sits to take minutes at architectural review board meetings. All of those different things, they take resources. So part of my question is just, if this is something you'd like to do, how strongly do you feel about it? What resources would you feel comfortable investing in this effort? Because frankly, this is not something that we'd want to do, in my view, part way. I think there are easier ways to skin the cat and ways that are much more complicated, but all of them would take some resources. I'm not sure what else is left there, Tyler. Again, and sort of for me, the most helpful part, we can go back a couple. You can see the things that they've noted. There was some of the leader arrows and just that narrative that they've put down on the photos. Some of the things that in Syracuse somebody thinks are important. For example, I saw something about awnings. We can see some of the buildings that have been built in our community. Use real recent example, Joann's. Really, really flat facade there on the Joann side. Nothing protruding, nothing to provide shade, for example, or to provide any pedestrian walking along the sidewalk in front of the building with any kind of refuge from elements, rain, snow, whatever it might be. And this is not intended to be disparaging at all, but AmSource, the developer of that project, and the Subway Pizza Factory project on the south, that's one of their signatures. You don't see things protruding from their buildings. As a development company, they don't like that. They don't like the expense that it adds. They don't like maintaining those things. And in most communities that they do work in, and it's not a few, their buildings are void of any of those types of embellishments, except where they're required to do it. So they built a project, for example, called Draper Crossing on 123rd South in Draper. I can't remember the stores. It's on the south side of the street there that AmSource owns, but there they have some roof lines that come out that provide some shade and again, just refuge for people walking along the strip center and into the entrances of the stores. And those only exist because the city made them do that. Just another thing to think about. So it's not necessarily just the retailers that push back sometimes from these efforts, but it's the developers that are maybe developing spec space that they simply intend to lease out. Just one thing, I guess, to think about. I can't remember, Tyler, if there's not a lot more to this by way of just links.
So, Dave, I guess, so a question, so these businesses, they put millions of dollars into their colors, their style of building, just like you said, what they put on the outside of the building. So are you suggesting that we as a council then just say we feel good about an awning, or are you saying we need to study that like they do, and that would be a part of our city so that it blends in with maybe what's there, or a specific standard that says every building that is this has to be exactly this direction? I really don't want KFC to be in bright green and orange colors. So would that be something that we would get even specific is about colors? Is that what you're kind of asking us to do, to think about?
For tonight, frankly, for me, it's think about.
To think about.
But even maybe just at the onset,
but
what do you think about the concept? And you can tell, and the audience likely get a sense for my, again, hesitance to get really on a soapbox to say this is something we should dive into. That being said, frankly, I think there's value. There's value in having some regulation. I will say that as the city planner here, more regulation than we've had in the past. But it's challenging to administer.
Well, you got some different things, if as a city if you want to implement things to keep everything kind of looking good and that. But as you bring these companies in, like you said, Outback, or you bring in McDonald's, or you bring in Chili's, or some of these guys, they spend millions and millions of dollars designing their buildings, and they trademark those buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people drive down the street, you look and you know exactly what that building
Without
is.
seeing a sign.
Without seeing a sign, it said that's there's a Chili's, that's a building. And so my personal feeling is, no, I don't want to get involved in telling them how to design their buildings, because they've spent a lot of money and they've trademarked their buildings. Now on a strip mall or something like that, that's where I could see the city maybe come in. We don't want just a straight facade all the way across. We want some, when you talk about some pooch outs or whatever you want to do there, that's where I can see us becoming more involved. But and even some of the bigger box stores, we can make some recommendations to them and ask them. I don't think we want to get into the point of dictating to them how they should build their buildings, and because to be honest, we want them in our cities, some of these places. And I've seen places in California where they've had to change their whole building concept. I used to build a lot of restaurants throughout the country, and in some areas they did, and they lose their whole identity, and I don't think that's what we here in Spanish Fork are looking for. Now, if you say someone builds a building and they want to make sure their neighbor builds something, well, we can kind of guide them along and help them along through our planning and DRC. And I'm a big advocate of less standards You know, I know we probably need some, but I don't want to become to the point where we dictate what everybody has to do. I remember a long time ago, I was building some buildings on Main Street before I was on the city council, and there was a business across the street from one I was building, and they wanted to redo their whole building, and they came in and said, well, you got to paint it this color. And they said, I don't want to paint it that color. And so they didn't do anything. And so it sat there and run down. I mean, here you had someone go in and say, I want to design or build this, or fix up my building, and they were told they couldn't, because unless they conformed to what the city wanted. And they said, fine, we'll just leave it just the way it is. And I don't want to get to that point, you know. The person's willing to spend their money. Now, if the city wants to spend their money and go build it the way the city wants, then more power to us. But I don't think we want to do that. I don't think we're in that business. That's my personal opinion, but I don't.
I think that's where Dave mentioned earlier that it feels like he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, is because
We all love going to communities that have really strict architectural standards.
Right.
We love it when we talk about the park cities and the Jacksons and places like that. We don't even need to talk about resort communities to think about those great places that we like to visit, that you know that there are things on buildings that only exist there because somebody was compelled to do that. There aren't a lot of those environments in the valley. And maybe other communities that we compete for retail uses don't have those kinds of standards in place, not to make excuses. Apologize for interrupting, but you're absolutely right to do it. I love it. I'd love to do everything that I could to help make Spanish Fork that kind of place where you recognize where you are just because of the field that you have, because of how things have been developed and built. Honestly, I think there are other ways we can do that besides dictating a lot of specifics on how buildings get designed.
Well, and you mention it, Park City, they're the extreme, right? And then for not wanting to offend, we won't choose the other extreme, right?
Got it.
But finding a happy medium, I think, is important. I agree with what Mayor's saying, but at the same time, when someone comes in and we say these are our standards, we would like to see some canopies out front, some things to break up the box so that you've got some overhead shielding for patrons and things. We're not talking about millions of dollars, not game changers, but just like you mentioned, the groups that have opened here, they were willing to work with us. And you said they weren't major things. And I don't foresee them having major things because, as the mayor stated, they've spent so much money on their brand. They're not going to build a green KFC, right? Just because that would probably not be very appealing. Maybe in
the only one that would go to it is Councilman Argel.
Chicken's good.
So do you have like, let me back up. So for you, Dave, as he's talking about things you can do across the board, we've looked at some developments and they've had some beautiful things about them, and a lot of that has to do with landscaping.
I was just going to say
Nothing to do with necessarily the architecture or the face of a building or things attached to the building, but really with the landscaping around it. But where we kind of run into a wall is where we have a standard and somebody doesn't either have the land to meet it. We've had some discussions about that with another business recently. They didn't have the land to meet maybe a parking standard or a landscaping standard. But inevitably somebody will not hit that mark. The people that do hit the mark, we'll never hear from them and things will just go on. But we'll always hear from those who don't hit that mark. And how important are those marks, whatever we set, for you as a council. No, you have to have a certain percentage of landscaping. You have to have trees. We need to have trees, and these are the reasons why. And when we set those marks, how important are they to you, and what kind of latitude do you want to give them? I had another thought, but it's gone. So,
I think once the marks are set, I mean that would be ordinance, and if we're going to set it, then it would need to be something that we feel strongly about to be able to enforce. to put the resources towards it, whether it's a code enforcement officer, different things like that. I agree with the mayor. I was out of town just this last weekend and found an Olive Garden simply because I recognized the architecture. There was a tree covering the sign, and we didn't know where we were going. Turn left, turn right, and I said, there it is, and that's where we were headed for dinner, simply because of the architecture and the rock and the way they built it. It looked like an Olive Garden, and sure enough, it was. So I agree with the mayor that a lot of the architecture is their branding. Nike has the swoosh, Adidas the 3 bars. Olive Garden has that particular Italian villa look. I'm not an architect, but that's what it looks like to me. I would hesitate in going a very broad brush. Whatever we do make certainly would have to stick. One of the questions I have though is, whatever standards, if there are any standards that we look at what point should that design be determined dated? The 70s were all about stucco. Now we still see stucco on buildings today, but it's not the 70s stucco. It's a you build, help me out. It's a much thinner application. It looks like it's not the thick, the real thick 70s look. At what is it, 1979, that we would say, this 26-page brochure is now outdated and we move to the 32-page? Or will that be 1982 that we say that's stucco? The 80s we have neon, and we don't see as much neon today. We see a lot of the, that home style look that you see in Georgetown with the brick and stuff. That's very popular now. And so we would need to look at, okay, well, how deep do we go? And then when do we say, well, yes, last month that design was approved, but the ordinance has since changed. 30, 90, 120 days requisite out, you can no longer build with that type of fascia, or that type of, you now have to follow this. And so that's one of my concerns is where's the timetable if we go down that road? For discussion.
My feeling is I don't want to get to that point where we're so stringent that we, I think we have some suggestions and some guidelines and say this is what we'd like to see, and most businesses will come in and will try to conform and try to do what you'd ask them to do, but I don't want to get to the point where we're so strict that you got to have the 70s stucco or the new stucco or and stuff like that. I think that defeats the whole purpose of. Then we can become the park cities and say, okay, you got to build all your buildings like this and stuff like that. I don't want to see that happen. Now, another thing, this is something just to think about. I think this is probably a discussion that we probably ought to be having in a work session with the planning board, and let them kind of give us some of their ideas and get their feedback. Just to see what how they feel there, because just my feeling on that.
I do like the idea of a Spanish fort.
Everybody has to have an SF on their building.
Look or identity, that's the word I'm looking for. The Spanish Fork identity. Now whether that's with street signs that all look the same, and even though you have different architecture, at least you still can pull that in. We've already started to see it in town with the lampposts. I think that's a beautiful addition to different parts of the city. So I think there are ways to go about it. I would hesitate with strict regulations on many of the businesses, though, I think.
I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think a lot of it comes down to a little bit of a little bit of economics and the free market working. I've financed commercial buildings in both places. Like the mayor stated, it's a different world of financing a building in Park City and building that, and then doing one in Spanish Fork and building that, and it will probably be 100 years from now too. So let's not get caught up in the game of when can we catch up to Park City, because we're not going to catch up to what their standard is, because we'll never have ski slopes running down to hotels here. But we do have some uniqueness in Spanish Fork as well, and I again, it would be hard for me, just as it is in a lot of areas that we discuss and end up making decisions on. But when a professional comes in and says, this is how it's done, this is how it's been done, this is what's proven time and time again how it's done, and I know, you know, we're elected to make some of those decisions and say, well, this is what we think, but it's hard to differ from a professional and definitely a paid position that has studied that a lot more than we ever will, even though we'll try to, and the planning commission would try to, but we are here to speak for the people, and that's where the power is in the people. So if we wanted to make those, it would be the people making that up, not a body of us necessarily making that up. I think it would have to reach out much further than just us. And then I guess the furthest reach I'd go for a period of time would definitely be to saying, hey, here's an owner of a strip mall. You want to build a strip mall? This is the design standards we have for a strip mall. So it's not just a square box. But if we think we're going to go talk to Home Depot and do much more than just the minor changes than what we discussed of the recommendations we made to Costco and other people, I think we're kidding ourselves, because we'd probably welcome a lot of those people with open arms.
These are some examples that Dave had put together, and you can get a look at some of the traditional big box stores and what they look like in some places and what they look like in others. Again, just based on somebody's standards at the time, or the city standards, or allowing them to be one way or the other. You can see a difference.
I think a key that Dave brought up was the unbiased and neutral reviewer of that stuff is maybe a huge component to it, right? Somebody that is trained in that field, that looks at it and isn't maybe as hungry as we are for a steakhouse or whatever. I'm not saying we implement this for steakhouses. I think if you were to look at it, it would be small changes into square strip malls, but other than that, I think a neutral, unbiased eye is key to it.
No, I don't know that you would necessarily have this information, but as I look at these, some of it, take the Checker for example. Were they both built at the same time?
I don't know.
The one may have been built in the 90s, and architectural standards have changed. And I'm guessing, but maybe they say, you know what, the more pleasing we make the facade of the building, the more inviting it is, we gain 13% more revenue. And so they've said, you know what, for our stores like that, we'll get around to updating them to the ones we're building. We'll build to that style because they've done the numbers and they say, hey, we get this much more revenue when it looks this particular style. We look at the McDonald's here in town, it's changed. It's the Wendy's right behind it has yes, and all those. It's not new construction, it's not city design, but it's looking at the numbers, looking at the percent of revenue, and saying if we look old, we won't get as much as if we look a newer or a particular style. So I think some of it may change over time, irrespective of our design standards. Though I do like a Spanish Fork identity of some type.
I thought this was just a quick thought. The idea of focusing on shells that are constructed for individual tenants that a lot of times aren't nationally based franchises or nationally based retailers, restaurants, whatever the case might be. Frankly, I think there's a ton of merit there because of the care that your typical nationally based retailer is putting out in making sure that their structures are aesthetically competitive. And I think, I'm trying to think of an example of, for example, a restaurant that would build fast food, whatever it might be today, a building that doesn't have some of the features that a document like this probably would say are required. There's articulation on the buildings, varied roof lines, quality composition in terms of materials and colors. I think that's almost a given. But it's more maybe of the, I don't want to say this, but I'll say it. I can't think of a better way to put it. Just simply you're less sophisticated. Developer that builds the 10,000 square foot strip mall, maybe looking to drive a project from a cost per leasable square foot. Maybe that's where we would get the best bang for our buck in terms of our focus, as opposed to worrying about the more nationally based types of things.
Yeah, I used to build Chili's, 30 years ago. I built them all over the country, and they all had this. They were all exactly the same. They're nothing like they are today. They don't even look like the same chili because they understand that they've got to change with the times, and so that's why I said those big national chains, you can't come in and make a change on them. I think where we do is like say in the strip malls, when a guy's building the box or stuff like that, you can kind of put in some identity and say, we just don't want a straight line across. Let's get the roof lines different, and say we want a little brick, stucco, whatever else on there to make that look stone or something to make it look a little better than just a straight strip mall. There you go.
I think it's a great time to be talking about it, though. I mean, we're in a place in our city where our population's getting to the point where historically it says we start getting this much more activity, and it's always, like we've always said, another clarifier that we've all explained to our neighbors and friends and relatives in this city has been, it's not because we denied them a liquor license that business isn't here. It's not because we said we don't want you. It's not because, we repeat, we're about the most open arms city, west of the Mississippi, asking for businesses to come here and inviting them to come here in a lot of different ways. So it's not for that fact. It's simply a population and usually a rooftop thing, like other professionals have told us, including you, Dave. And so it's smart to have this conversation before you're built out in a commercial place, and then you're trying to find your identity. But we're here just discussing it prior to maybe that acceleration coming, right?
Exactly. Thank you. I really appreciate the idea. I'm embarrassed to even think about maybe going to the planning commission first with this, but I like that idea maybe as part of a work session with them sometimes.
I think that'd be good. I think we can get some good ideas and talk about it. So I like this discussion we've had, and I think we need to keep going on and have more discussions like this.
I completely failed to bring up residential, by the way, which is part of what
That's all
I think
right.
Seth wanted to cover tonight. But for me, that's a totally different animal.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Good discussion. All right.
I see. Hey, thank you for finding it.
Are we going to closed session?
I'll second that.
We got a motion by Councilman Gordon and a second by Councilmember Beck. Going closed session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for everyone that was here. Adjourn to a closed session.
Yeah, let's just stay here.